Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity for us to be here today, and I just want to say thank you for coming out today. I know there are a lot of other things you could have been doing with your families and so forth, and I appreciate the fact that you understand the importance of what we're doing and the time in which we live, because I think we genuinely are living in the most crucial time in America's history. Certainly in our generation, this is coming down to some of the votes that you will cast in the next year will be the most crucial votes, I think, of your lifetime and of my lifetime. So I appreciate you taking the time to come out. I want to start, though, by asking you the same two questions that I've been asking people all across the state of Georgia, everywhere I've spoken for the last 7 months. I know you're sitting there. You're probably already a little bit full, but I want to hear your answer. So if you would just participate with me for a few minutes. First of all, the question I'd like to ask you is this: how many of you in the room today would agree that we'd all be better off with a little less federal government in our lives? And the follow-up is, how many of you think that you'd be better off with a lot less federal government in your lives? I am Ray McBarry. I am a Republican candidate for governor, and I am the only states' rights Republican in the race for governor. I want you to know that when Nolan gave me the list here and it says your signature issue needs to be included, well, my signature issue is the issue of states' rights and state sovereignty. Unlike some of my opponents in the race for governor, I've been talking on the subject of states' rights and the 10th Amendment as the final peaceful constitutional solution for reining in an out-of-control federal government. I've been speaking on that subject across America for the last decade of my life. And so I'm not a newcomer to the issue of states' rights. I've been talking about it for a long time. I've spoken literally across America to Republican Party groups, to civic organizations, and in classrooms all across the country. And I believe that if there's any one key solution to all these myriad of problems that we see coming out of Washington today, it is the 10th Amendment and states' rights. And what you need more than anything from your next governor is someone who not only says they believe in the principle of states' rights, but someone who understands the mechanisms that a states' rights governor could employ to keep the federal government at the state line, to keep the federal government out of your lives. And so that's what I believe my number one responsibility to you will be as your next governor, is to get the government out of your lives so that you can get on with the pursuit of happiness. I want to tell you that I am a conservative, but I'm not one of those middle-of-the-road moderate conservatives. So if you're looking for a John McCain to be your next governor, I'm not going to be your candidate. But if you're looking for someone who is a traditional conservative, someone who is a constitutionalist, and a states' rights Republican, there's only going to be one name on the ballot for you, and that's Ray McBarry. I believe very much that the biggest problem we have in Valdosta, Georgia today is that there's too much Washington in Atlanta and too much of Atlanta in the rest of the state, running our lives, telling us how to live, and then expecting for us to foot the bill for the whole thing. Well, folks, let me just tell you, 90% of what the federal government has its hands in your lives every day is unconstitutional. They have absolutely no authority to be doing what they're doing. And by the way, isn't it interesting that the very few things that they are supposed to be doing, like defending your borders, they don't do? And so what we desperately need is to have a governor who will stand up to Washington and say, enough is enough, leave my people alone. I'm going to try to cover these different issues that you've asked us to speak on today, and I'll be more than happy to entertain whatever questions you have when we get to the question and answer portion. First of all, you already have heard my position on states' rights. Several months ago, speaking at the Madison Forum up in Marietta, Congressman Tom Price from Georgia said that the most crucial issue facing Georgia's next governor would be the issue of states' rights and state sovereignty. Now, that's one of your congressmen coming back home from Washington who lives up there, sees it every day, saying that your most crucial issue your next governor is going to face is states' rights. Folks, you cannot afford to do less than electing the most conservative, constitutionalist states' rights Republican in this upcoming governor's race. If you do anything less than that, I assure you, you will not recognize America 8 years from today. If you're not happy with the things already coming out of Washington, you sure won't be happy with the things that are coming down the pipe. And folks, Georgia has a long, rich history and heritage in standing up for states' rights and state sovereignty. One of my favorite stories is Chisholm versus Georgia. Shortly after the Constitution of these United States was adopted in, I believe it was 1793, there was a man from another state that tried to sue the state of Georgia in the federal courts. He took the state of Georgia to the federal courts, and the federal judge issued an order to the state of Georgia saying, you must come and appear before the federal courts so that we can hear the case and rule on the matter. Well, let me tell you, in 1793, Georgians knew how to deal with an out-of-control federal government. And the solution, or the response that Georgia sent back to the federal government then, was that the states formed the federal government, not the other way around, and therefore the states are the masters, and the federal government is supposed to be the servant to the states, not the other way around. And so because of that, the sovereign state of Georgia will not come and appear before the federal courts on this or any other matter. And the state of Georgia went on to say in our response that any federal agent caught within the boundaries of the sovereign state of Georgia trying to enforce those unconstitutional federal measures would be, and I quote, arrested and hanged by the neck until dead without the benefit of clergy. Now, folks, I'm here to tell you the problems have not changed from 1793 to 2009. Today, we still deal with an out-of-control federal government, and the solutions are the same today. We must have a governor who will stand up to Washington and say, if you can't show it to me in the Constitution, you're not going to do it to my people here in Georgia. You know, Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution very clearly lays out the entire scope and authority of the federal government. We think about Obama health care, which is not one of your issues today, but whether you're talking about that, water rights, whether we can check people's citizenship when we register them to vote, or right on down the line, all these myriad of states' rights issues that are alive today can be answered by a governor who simply has the backbone to stand up to Washington and say, Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, you show me in the Constitution where you have the authority to do this, or get the heck out of my state. Now that's what we need today, is a governor who will stand up for our liberties. And a governor who will stand up against the attacks upon your liberties from wherever those attacks may come. Whether it be from the Middle East or from a little bit closer to home like the banks of the Potomac. Either way, we need a governor who will stand up for our liberties. I want you to know that neither my opponents nor the media have made any bones about the fact that Ray McBarry is the strongest fiscal conservative in the race for governor and the strongest constitutional conservative in the race for governor. One of your issues is taxes. I am the only candidate who has publicly stated that here in Georgia we should repeal both the state income tax and the property tax and replace both of them with a simple state sales tax. I'm going to give you two reasons that we ought to do that. The first reason is that neither the income tax nor the property tax are American. They were not part of the founding principles that made America great. They're both Marxist to the core. They were not part of the plan that made America what America has been during all the years of our greatness. And if we're going to get back to being great, both in America and in Georgia, we're going to have to get rid of every vestige of socialism, Marxism, and communism that has crept into America for the last 100 years of our history, and that includes both the property tax and the income tax. And I can think of no better place to start in America than right here at home, right here in Georgia.
Hear, hear.
Now, if you're not interested in the philosophy reason of why we ought to get rid of them, let me tell you the dollars and cents reason that we ought to do that. Until we can get rid of all the illegal aliens that ought not be here in the first place thanks to our federal government, if we go to a simple state sales tax, at least they'll finally have to start paying for their fair share of all the services that they use.